Hello, this is Tiara,
Hello, this is Ali.
and this is the Goddess Vibration. Welcome, you guys, to another episode. So, we did conclude our trauma series. We finished off on talking about the rejection wound, and my story was pretty interesting. So, I'm curious to see how you guys respond to that. Um, but overall, we can't really tell whether you guys care about trauma. I just feel like in comparison to some of the other episodes, there just was not the same interest, which is fine. Like, you guys tell us what you like. It's just, it would have been great if, like, you know, more people cared about healing that kind of thing because it's so significant and so many of us are afflicted by it. But hey, we're here to cater to you guys.
That we are. I
Yeah.
understand what Tiara is saying, but trauma can be pretty dark.
No, it is. And, like, obviously, if you're wanting to be uplifted, you're not going to want to hear a podcast episode about your childhood sucking. So, like, so I get it. I definitely get it. But it is that series in particular is a really great resource if you guys are on a specific healing journey and you want, some additional recommendations. We're going to create that as oh my God, what's it called? Captivate. I was gonna make it
I don't know where you're
playlist.
going with this. Oh, there that's where you're going with this.
So we're gonna turn that into a separate playlist, and it should be accessible on our website. So those particular episodes will be listed together on the website if you want to listen to that at some point, you know, later down the line. But it is a fantastic resource for those who are wanting a different direction when it comes to healing. So please do take advantage of those episodes if you're looking for some guidance in regards to inner childhood wounding.
And I just want to lastly note about this is that everyone has inner child wounding, and we didn't mean to bring so much darkness into the podcast. We just really wanted to bring awareness in. But I understand if, compared to some of our other episodes that are more popular, we get it, right? Like you guys want to come and like kind of detach from everyday life, and trauma is not that.
No, it really isn't. So I totally completely understand, like, if perhaps that series wasn't as popular. Um, so that's why we are switching gears on this episode, and we're going to talk about tarot and divination. We're probably going to mostly focus on tarot because that's what me and Ali know best. But tarot is super, super interesting. And there are different ways to really get into tarot and take advantage of it. And I don't think a lot of people really know how to do that effectively, especially if you're just getting started, or perhaps you're an amateur, or you're still learning. There is so much to tarot. So, we're going to dive into tarot and share a little bit about how we've used tarot and about how we got into tarot because this is going to be really interesting. And I think this is going to be a fun episode.
We also might briefly talk about dowsing as another divination tool because I know that's really popular. I see a lot of people either getting into dowsing, or I see a lot of on spiritual TikTok, there's a lot of posts of people dowsing. So we might touch on it, or we probably will just touch on it just for those curious minds.
I've seen a lot of those dowsing videos, like the lives, the TikTok lives.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen a lot
they're
of that.
really popular.
Yeah. It's so funny because I could never get dowsing to work for the love of me. I don't know what it was. Like different divination tools work differently for different people. But for whatever reason, I could never get that off the ground. Allie was able to make it work successfully. So, obviously she'll have more to share about that.
Absolutely. But let's get into tarot because that's what we said that we were going to talk about first. My experience with tarot has kind of been an on and off thing. Like my mother did have a tarot deck, but I didn't know that that's what it was.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't know that that's what it was, but I used to like just play with cards and just pull cards. I didn't really know what any of it meant because I didn't have the book and I didn't study tarot. But I just really enjoyed playing cards when I was a kid. And so, I mean, anything that was a deck. So I was somewhat familiar, but I didn't know what any of the cards meant until Tiara, when was I out in Arizona? Like 3 years ago, 4 years ago,
oh
2020?
gosh. Yeah, I think it was like it was before COVID, wasn't it?
No, it was during COVID.
Oh, was it? Okay, it would have been
Yeah,
2020.
it was 2020. And Tiara had her tarot deck, and I was like, hey, I know what that is. And so it's like I reintroduced myself to tarot like while I was at visiting Tiara. And I still didn't really know what the cards meant, but she was just like, we should go get you a deck. And so like we drove to the store and I just kind of picked a deck intuitive. I really like vibrant, beautiful colors. And so it was a traditional Raider weight, but it was very like vibrant colors. It was a really beautiful deck. And we brought it back to Tiara's house and I was just like, so what am I doing? And she was like, well, people do spreads. Like, spreads are really popular, but like a lot of people will start with something easy, like past, present, future. And I don't even think we did any of that. Tiara was just like, I just kind of pick up the cards and I just start shuffling and ask it a question. And then cards will either jump, meaning that the cards will like pop out on its own as you're shuffling, or you can you know, fan the cards and pick random cards, or you can cut the deck. There's like a million ways to do this, you guys, and we'll get into more specifics as we talk about tarot. But for me, it was just I asked the question, um, we split the deck, and then I pulled the top card. And I will say, learning tarot is really hard because there's 78 cards, right? There's 78 cards. Is that right?
Yeah, so I believe there's uh
70.
15. Yeah, yeah, 15 majors and the rest are minors.
No, there's 22 majors.
Okay, I'm sorry. 22 majors and the rest are minors.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a lot of cards to memorize every meaning because tarot, what makes tarot so difficult is that there's general meanings for all of the cards. But once you know the general meaning of that card, then you have to intuit what the card's
Right.
actually really trying to tell you.
Yeah.
And I surprisingly just was a natural with it.
Yes, I was too. And I think I started off watching tarot videos on TikTok, which are so addicting, especially if you're on a twin flame journey. Oh my God, those love readings, hours and hours of time wasted watching that shit. But it was very entertaining. And at some point, I just like woke up and I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna get a tarot deck. So I went and got a tarot deck. And then I enrolled in like this online learning program because they have these learning programs for tarot where it's like you can enroll and then like they'll kind of teach you how to learn the cards and like give you tips and tools and tricks. And I enrolled in one for like maybe I was in it for like 2 months. And then once I felt more comfortable, I disenrolled and just kind of started, you know, trying to memorize the general meanings. And the way I did it is I would pick a card each day. I think I focused on the majors. I would pick a major each day and then reflect on its meaning for the rest of the day and then try to assign examples to it. And that was actually really, really helpful. That helped a lot.
I thought you
But
did that with the whole deck.
no, I focused on the majors because there was
Oh.
too many cards.
Oh.
And the majors are, you know, they're the cards that signify significant, you know, events in your life or events tied to your destiny in some kind of way. So I did focus on that, and then when you're doing tarot regularly, you get better at it. It's when you fall off that you kind of start to lose a little bit of it. And I see a lot of people that because tarot is so daunting, they get started and then eventually they just get overwhelmed and then they stop and set the cards to the side and never pick them up again. And I think that's unfortunate because there's so much value that you can get from tarot. And I know myself, I got so much value out of tarot, especially when it came to boosting my self awareness or trying to unravel things that I didn't quite understand or trying to gain clarity about a situation. I got so much from tarot. And I sort of just decided that it was something I really enjoyed. And I just gradually started adding more and more and more cards to my collection. So I think at this point I have, oh gosh, I have not counted all the cards I have. I want to say maybe 28 cards, but that includes tarot and oracle decks. Um, I really only have actually like maybe 4 or 5 tarot decks because I like very specific tarot. So I'm kind of like Ali. Like I do like vibrant, colorful decks, but I really, really like the traditional Raider Waite imagery. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar, that's the imagery that you see on the traditional old school tarot cards. That artistry that goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's called the Raider Waite traditional deck, and it's probably the most common, and it's the artistry that you'll see the most. I prefer the traditional artistry, but I do like cards that kind of put their own artistic spin on it, but by maintaining the same arts or like symbology in each of the cards, if that makes sense.
I don't know if I followed that.
So okay, so you know how the Raider Waite it's got that traditional imagery.
Yes.
Um, you see the Two of Cups, for example. It's just the people standing there, and there's a man and a woman, and they're each holding a cup. They're facing each other. You've got the angel in the background and the caduceus.
Yes.
So in Raider Waite, that Two of Cups is always going to look that way in that specific, you know, design or art form. Now, I like that, and I want my Two of Cups to look like that, but I'm open to different artistic spins on it. So maybe, it shows a homosexual couple there, but they're still holding the 2 cups and they're facing each other. Or maybe it's a biracial couple there, but they're still facing each other and holding the 2 cups. Like, that's what I mean when I say I like the traditional symbology, but I'm willing and open to accept different artistic spins on it. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
It's like I wasn't following that person. I actually know what you meant because I know you, but if I was a listener, I probably would have been like, yeah, I have no idea where she just went there.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the artist Matt Hughes. He's got a couple tarot decks, and his style is Art Nouveau. And oh my God, I'm obsessed. It is so freaking beautiful. And he's got, I think this one was the Golden Art Nouveau, which is one I have. And then he's got an Art Nouveau, and then a, it's like a moon Art Nouveau, Luna Art Nouveau, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And the deck kind of has like that shimmer or like that rainbow shimmer to it, and the symbology is the same, but he's got a different artistic spin on it, and there's a lot of diversity, and I love that. So that's my deck right now. That's the one I'm obsessed with. That's the one that I'm using the most. Um, But ultimately, when it comes to choosing a deck, you do want to choose it intuitively. You want to choose a deck that you're drawn to and that you feel a connection to. Because honestly, every time you get, whether it's an oracle deck or a tarot deck, every time you get a new set of cards to divinate with, you're going to want to connect to the deck. Uh, what I mean by that is that it's not just an intuitive connection that you have with the cards, but it's just trusting that the cards are going to work for you in your best and highest good. Now, I have gotten cards that I did not feel that way about. And I didn't choose them intuitively because, you know me, I like pretty things. So oftentimes I have chosen decks that were just pretty and then tried to use them and just felt no connection. That will happen. That's a real thing. It's a real phenomenon. And I think I gave one of my decks to Ali for that reason.
You did.
Yes.
It's an awesome deck too.
No, it's gorgeous. It's
I don't
absolutely gorgeous.
use it enough. I should use it more. Here's another thing about tarot decks that Tiara and I both have experienced because we both have multiple decks. Like, I think Tiara said that she has 28. I think we're like tied. I think I also have like 28 decks. But you want to know what? That's like, this is a side note. This is moderate because I have Googled, like, just out of pure curiosity, like, on average, how many decks do people have? And so I think like it came up on like a Quora um thread, and some people were like, "Oh my god, I have 400 decks."
What are you
and
doing with
I was
400
and
decks?
I was like, "Who? What do you do with 400 decks?"
Like, you can't possibly connect to 400 different decks of cards.
I don't know. I'm just saying. So I think like the people who do like heavily do like YouTube readings, I think that they probably have like a close to the hundreds in decks. So it's not abnormal to have multiple decks. Tiara and I are clearly on the lower end here. But I will say that sometimes, even if you're connected to the deck, when you're asking it questions, you might not get any answers from that deck. And so Tiara and I have both been in situations where, like, okay, well, let's switch decks.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, see, see, she knows. So, pending on like your relationship with the deck, or maybe that deck doesn't want to be asked specific questions, like all of this, like, kind of shit comes up in tarot, and it is a lot to navigate. So, I understand why some people just were like, no, this isn't for me, because tarot is a commitment.
Yes, it really is. And honestly, you have to commit to it at least a couple days a week if you really want to get it down and be comfortable with being able to pull a spread and know exactly what the cards are saying to you. And I think a lot of people focus too much on trying to capture and memorize the meaning of each card, which isn't necessarily what you have to do. I mean, yeah, it's good to know the general meaning of a card, but you're not meant to like focus on that. You're meant to use your intuition. The meaning of the card is just a starting place. So I know for me, when my tarot divination got better, it was when I leaned more heavily into my intuition as opposed to pulling out the cards and trying to figure out, like, okay, what does each card mean? And then trying to come up with an answer. It's more along the lines of, okay, well, I generally know this card is saying this. What is my intuition saying in regards to that? And that's how you end up getting the answer. So I mean, that's how it's worked for me. And I do know a lot of times people seem to focus way too much on trying to memorize the like formal definition of each card, and that's not necessarily what you have to do.
I agree with you there. I would also say that if you're just starting, don't try to read reversals.
Oh, you know what? I dived right into reversals. I
I
didn't even
did
think about
too.
that.
No, I
Yeah.
did too. But I'm also a highly intuitive person. So I rely more on my intuition than I do what the cards are saying to me.
Well, yeah, and that's how you're supposed to do it because sometimes, and I've done this where I've pulled cards and intuited something that's not traditionally associated with that card, but it ended up being correct. And sometimes that will happen. So that's why I was saying earlier not to focus too heavily on trying to memorize the definition of every single card. As long as you kind of understand the general meaning, that's really all you need. In regards to the reversals, like I think that's a good idea, Ali, to not, if you're getting started for the first time, to not read reversals. Because the reversal is essentially like just the opposite of what the upright would say. Um, Now there are different websites you can go to, and I've done this where I've like bookmarked websites that have tarot meanings, and I've gone and looked at upright reversals and use that as a starting point. You can do that, but if you're just getting started, it'll be much easier for you if you just focus on getting down the uprights. If something comes up reverse, turn it back upright and try to intuit. It'll help.
It will. But that's why I'm just saying if you're just starting and if you don't have a strong connection to your intuition and if you're just starting, I wouldn't recommend diving into reversals. Just really kind of focus on the meaning of the cards. Don't try to memorize it all, like Tiara said, but just focus on the meaning of the cards and then use your intuition to say, from the meaning of this card, what is my intuition telling me? Like, what does this mean?
Absolutely.
So,
So we talked a little bit about some of the things you can do if you're getting started, what we recommend if you're getting started. I have done the yes no questions for tarot, and getting yes no responses is a little tricky because sometimes you need to program the deck. So sometimes you need to say to it, okay, I'm going to ask a yes no. A yes is going to look like this, a no is going to look like this. So for me, what I did is I programmed the deck and I said, okay, if you show me major arcana and they're upright, that's my yeses. If they're reversed, that's my no's. But tarot doesn't always listen. So I have asked yes no questions and actually gotten like minor arcana. Um, for the record, and just side note, different tarot decks have different personalities. I know that sounds insane, but if we know that crystals have different personalities, why can't tarot decks? Like, it's an energy, right? Um, my different tarot decks act differently and they respond to questions differently, which is why one of the things I think we did initially with Ali is we interviewed the deck. And basically, what you're doing is you're just asking questions like, how can I best work with you? What can you tell me about your energy? Um, you know, how can we develop a format that is best for us? That's something that you can do when you get a brand new tarot deck. You're going to want to clear the energy, whether that's saging it or whether that's just, if you use Reiki or anything like that, you can use that to clear the energy of the cards, and then interview it. It'll give you some insights. In regards to the yes no, I started doing it that way, but once I started getting minor arcana for yes no responses, I started realizing, okay, I'm going to have to intuit the yes or the no. Now that's relatively advanced. If you're getting started, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but this is just an example of some of the different ways that you can use tarot.
yes notes can be tricky. I don't, for honestly, I always tell anyone who's starting with tarot, stay away from the yes no questions. Just stay away. Because tarot's actually not really meant for yes no questions, truthfully.
Yes, if you're getting started, I do agree with that. But if you're like me and you're ambitious and you like to dive the fuck in, then I think it's gonna take more than just asking the cards to tell you a yes no. You're gonna have to again lean on your intuition.
No, I agree with you, but it's for just starting, like, because you think like yes no's would be so easy, right? If you're just starting out, you're just like, okay, does like does this deck want to work with me? Yes, no. It's like I had to like really kind of like figure out how to, and I'm interrupting my own thought here, but I will say that tarot will teach you how to ask open-ended questions. Like, I
Yes.
have gotten so good at asking open-ended questions. And honestly, a lot of people like don't it's a skill that's been lost over time, And so tarot actually can retrain you and reteach you how to ask open-ended questions, and it's actually pretty cool.
Yes, I always try to lean on if you're trying to figure out how to ask the questions to tarot, who, what, when, where, why type of questions. The only ones that might be tricky are the when ones because that's a different skill that I personally have not mastered. I know that there are some people who will say if you're trying to figure out a time frame or like a future dates or even the past, they'll program each of the suits to align with different things. So you've got your cups, you've got the pentacles, you've got the why is this always so hard? Cups, pentacles,
Pentacles,
swords, and
swords,
wands.
and wands. Yeah.
So some people will say, okay, well, wands are weeks, cups are months, pentacles are days, and so on and so forth. Again, needing to program the deck so that the deck knows the expectation you have when it comes to getting the answer. So I've seen it done that way. The why is an as it comes with an or I'm sorry, the when comes with an asterisk. Again, that's more advanced. I wouldn't recommend diving into that, but starting with like
What?
who, what, why
You
are
just said
probably going
don't
to
do
be
why.
no. I said don't do when.
Oh.
Who, what, why, and how. How also are going to be the ones you're going to want to start with as far as asking open-ended questions.
It will vastly improve your skills. I'm telling you. I am like the queen of questions. In our channeling sessions, I have so many questions. And I really like have learned that from like just doing so much tarot.
Yeah, I think Ali has a list of like 80 questions right now that we need to channel for. Uh, but yes, no, she's absolutely right. Like the way you ask the question is going to be really significant because I have asked questions and tarot has sent me on a completely wild goose chase and like to the point where I've gotten frustrated and gone to another deck and then it does the same thing. So sometimes tarot won't answer the question if it's not something you're meant to know at that time. So, tidbit, keep that in mind when you're asking questions. That tarot can sometimes give you answers that are completely out of the ball field.
Or tarot will send you on a wild goose chase, or tarot will just flat out not answer your question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I
Tiara
think I
love
have,
Tiara and I love it when that happens.
I think I have asked questions and gotten responses like, "Oh, you need to focus on loving yourself more," and I'm like, "That's not what I fucking asked you." Like, so sometimes stuff like that will happen. So, um, but ultimately, tarot is meant to be something that's for your best and highest good, right? So, I mean, it only makes sense that maybe you'll get responses that don't necessarily answer your question, but are still for your best and highest good. It happens.
And then if you really, really want to get advanced with tarot, and I can say that I personally am not even there, but like those cards are actually tied to so many other things,
Oh, yes.
like the tr- the the tree of life. It could be tied to the four elements. It's tied to astrology.
Yes.
It is tied to numerology. And so there really is like this whole universe of information that's within tarot. But like I said, some of that, unless astrology is your thing or numerology is your thing, it's probably more advanced. For me personally, I don't know much about numerology or astrology. I mean, I know basics, but I mean, people can use tarot for like deeper divination than just asking it questions.
Yes, I've actually used tarot with astrology because the major arcana cards are each tied to a different planet or a different um, astrological sign. So that actually does give a little bit more insight because I know I've asked questions where I pulled a major and I didn't realize or understand the response until I looked into the astrology tied to the card and then it made sense. Um,
So, for example, just to throw an example out there, I know that the magician, I think the magician is, I think his number is one. I think his card, because fool's
yeah,
zero, and I think the
yeah,
magician's one.
yeah,
So, for example, like the magician is tied to the planet Mercury. And if you know anything about astrology, then Mercury is like communication, right?
yes.
Yeah,
Communication, um, fast movements, electronics, electricity,
right.
that kind of thing.
So it's like, so if you see the magician, and if you're looking at it just like on, okay, what does the magician mean? It could mean something bigger, like, the planet Mercury and communication. And so it's like, if you really want to dive in deeper, this is where tarot can take you if that's the path that you choose to take with tarot. And so there really is like all this mystical information and stuff tied to tarot that's like goes way beyond like, you know, what is this person's energy today?
It really does. And I absolutely love that about tarot because you can tie it to broader things that are helpful for you or that resonate for you. I'm not an astrology expert, but I know enough that that astrology component of it has been so, so helpful. Now, if you're getting started in cards and you're like, oh my God, tarot is just way over my head, it's like too damn much. I completely understand. It is a lot. It's 78 cards you got to study, right? Like you got to at least get the general meaning of each of these 78 cards. So it's a lot. You can also do Oracle, and Oracle is different. It's essentially an Oracle deck is a set of cards that have general specific meanings and they're tied to just about any specific topic, right? So they have love Oracle decks, they have guidance Oracle decks, they have Oracle decks that are tied to things like star seeds and witches and witchery and other forms of occultish beliefs. I personally am a big fan of the Oracle decks that are love based or that are offering some type of guidance or wisdom around specific topics. So I have some that are like for women. I think I have one that's like womb wisdom. I have one that's guidance messages for women on the spiritual journey. I think I have one that's like messages from the goddesses. And the thing I love about Oracle decks is that they're so varied and there's like hundreds of thousands of them out there. So you can easily pick an Oracle deck that aligns with your needs, that's beautiful, that resonates, and that gives you the guidance and support that you need. And it does so in a way that's a little bit more easy than it is with tarot, at least in my humble opinion.
I think Oracle is easier only because a lot of Oracle decks also come with the book.
That's true. That's huge.
And
Yeah.
that is huge because so many tarot decks don't come with the book. And so you have to find like online resources or you have to buy your own book. And like I said, when you want to dive deeper, you have to figure out like what cards might be tied to astrology or numerology. And then but Oracle is just like, it's a lot, it's a much simpler process. It comes with the book, and usually the descriptions and the meanings are like it's all there. It's like less intuiting. It's just more user friendly.
Yes, I
and
agree.
yeah, unless there are some decks. There are some, like, especially the ones that are sold on Etsy, because Etsy has beautiful decks.
Oh, I love their decks.
I know. A lot of them, a lot of them don't come with a book. And so you really will want to build up your skills when you want to move into those Etsy decks. I like after I got my first tarot deck, you guys, I think I bought like 3 Etsy decks, and none of them just came with the book. And I was just like, huh, maybe I went in a little over my head here.
But they were
but
so pretty.
they were so pretty. I know. It's my weakness, pretty cards. But I will
Yeah.
say that like a lot of my oracle decks, things that I'm drawn to, I'm really drawn to like the dream decks. I'm drawn to soul decks, past lives decks, chakra decks. So like a lot of the work that I'm really fascinated with, like Tiara is like, oh, she's really into those love decks, and she actually has a love deck I'm obsessed with. Um, but for me, I have always really been drawn to like dreams and the soul journey and past lives and um chakras and how, everything's connected to the universe, which if you know who I am, that actually makes a lot of sense for me. And so that's what I do like in my work with my clients. Like we really dig into like the soul's journey and we do some past life regression and soul integration. And I'm working on some other stuff in regards to timelines and chakras and how we're all connected. And so, like, if you're into any of this stuff, you can really like teach yourself and really like start like with oracles to set you down a path before you even want to get into tarot, because like I said, oracle is much more user friendly.
Yes, I actually think that's a good path to start with Oracle because at least then you can kind of practice with your intuition a little bit before you dive into tarot. Now, I didn't do that, and ultimately that's up to you if that's what makes you more comfortable. Um, but I am in full agreement that oftentimes it is better to start with an Oracle deck. And I've given Oracle decks as gifts for people like their first deck. Um, and I mean, people seem to have appreciated that. But Allie's right that I'm obsessed with the love decks. And I have this one that's, oh, it's so spicy. And it's like, it just has like one or two words on it. And they'll be like soul tie or like, passion or like, chemistry. And oftentimes I will pull those if I'm curious about divine counterpart style connections because it tells you a lot. It really does. And it's also really entertaining.
It is
Depending,
so entertaining.
oh my
Tiara, I
God.
was house sitting for Tiara and she like went to Texas for a week and I just like played with that deck all week while she was gone. And I'm like sending her photos and I was just like, look at this answer for this question. And you're just like, wow.
Yeah, she went to town on that deck. And I was like, dang, girl. But like, yeah, the love oracles are a lot of fun. And Etsy has some of the most beautiful love oracles I've ever seen. They're expensive though, like they're 60, $70 easy.
The
But
deck you have was like 90. That's the only reason why I don't own it, people.
it was 60 at the
Oh.
time. And the thing what they do, I don't know if this is an Etsy thing, but they're like limited edition, like some of those Oracle decks. So they'll be on there for a little bit and then they'll sell out and then that's it. So I think Ali was trying to find that deck later and you couldn't find it.
And
Um,
if I could find it, it would like shot up to $100.
right. So Etsy is a good place to go to get Oracle decks or even tarot decks. I've seen some very beautiful tarot decks on there too. But another good place is actually Kickstarter that has pretty cool decks too. Because a lot of people are like doing the first launch for their decks, and oftentimes they're just really unique, beautiful designs. Um, so Kickstarter and Etsy are some of the best places, at least in my opinion, to go to get decks. You can also go to like a divination shop, which is what I think me and Ali did the first time.
Yes.
Um, if you want to like physically touch the card, if you want to choose it intuitively, that's going to be your route, just to go to a divination shop. But if you can't get to one, then you can definitely find some really beautiful decks online.
I want to go back to tarot real quick. I want to ask, and I think like I have my theories on it, but I think Tiara has more theories on this. But there is like this negative sentiment around tarot. And like I've even have met people that was like, "Oh no, I don't touch tarot. It's not my thing," but they're obsessed
Yeah.
with oracle. So, I don't know. I kind of just want to talk briefly about like why this negative sentiment is there or why people are afraid of it?
So I know in my family, I have several relatives that think tarot is the devil. And I think part of it is that my family is quite religious. At least this particular subset of my family, these particular relatives are religious. They're Christian. And they're of the belief that tarot is like forbidden knowledge or forbidden information that was not meant for man to be dabbling with, that it's of the darkness. I kind of get where some of that sentiment comes from because, you know, the Bible does talk about forbidden knowledge and not going into those tools of divination because they're not meant to be used by man. But the reason for that was because that information was given to us in a fashion that it shouldn't have been. I think part of it too is that divination, in particular tarot, was something that didn't really take off until like the 1900s. It originated originally in Italy in the 1400s, and then eventually it transitioned to a divination tool later. And then it sort of just kind of got picked up by occult circles and witches. And I think maybe there's a stigma tied to that might be affecting people. I honestly don't know. I just know that for my family, it seems to be tied to some of the things that the Bible says. And they just sort of have this belief in their heads that since that's what the Bible says, then it means that it's evil. Um, I've actually had people on Facebook, like, that's so silly, unfriend me for doing tarot.
Are you serious?
Yes, I have. So people have their feelings about it. I think I had posted like one of my spreads, and I was like, "Oh, look how freaking cool this is! Look how beautiful this deck is!" And then like I had like dropped some friends, like lost my count went my count went down. But yeah, people have their sentiments around tarot depending on their traditional beliefs.
I honestly, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but I don't get it. I just see it as it's either your thing or not your thing, and that's fine if it's not your thing. But like I have met people that was just like, I don't touch it. I don't go near it. Let's not talk about it. And I'm just like, we don't have to, but I don't understand your sentiment.
Well, and the thing is that tarot is it's a divination tool, right? It's meant to connect you to your intuition to get answers that are meant to help you in your spiritual journey. It's not really anything more than that. I mean, I guess it depends on how you use it, right? But there are other tools like dowsing. I've seen people use what are the things that the people hold and then like the wires they cross
The rods,
the
the
rods.
dowsing rods, they're called dowsing rods.
Yes, the dowsing rods. That's another tool of divination. Uh, Other people might just have psychic abilities. I mean, I guess depending on how you look at it, that's also divination. Um, some people can talk directly to spirit. Is that also divination? I guess so. It's just different ways that people get answers that are meant to help them. And it shouldn't really be anything beyond that, in my opinion.
I agree. I Let's go back to dowsing real quick because I know Tiara has tried and the pendulum just doesn't move for her.
Like at all.
um, my mother could douse. She just was, I don't know if she studied it. I don't really know how she got into it. But I remember seeing, I'm like probably 14, 13 or 14 at this point, and I remember seeing the pendulum, like I think on our island in our kitchen. And I picked it up and I was like, what is this for? And my mother's like, oh, I use that to douse. And I was like, what's dowsing? And she was like, hold out your hand. And she had me like hold out my left hand. And she was like, ask it a yes or no question. I was just like, okay, my mother's officially lost it, but sure. So, yeah, I don't know. I asked it a yes or no question. She's like, ask it like, is today Tuesday? And it wasn't a Tuesday. And so I asked it like, is today Tuesday? And the pendulum just started moving. And she was like, wow. She was like, you're a natural. She was like, I don't meet too many people like who can just naturally ask it a question and have it move and give you the correct answer.
Wow.
And I was just like, this is all that's to it. And she was just like, yeah, like you're just connected to the pendulum and you're connected to the source and your frequency is high enough to move this pendulum. And honestly, guys, that's how I got into dowsing. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to do it. She just was like, put it over your left hand because you always want to hold the pendulum in your dominant hand. And then your other hand is like your energy hand. And you just start asking yes or no questions. And that's what you do with the dowsing rods too. Like, I know that you can also use the dowsing rods like to check. Well, you can use a pendulum too, but like you can check to see if your chakras are open or closed. Like I know that like my acupuncturist uses rods to check whether or not my chakras are open or closed or where they're at or if they're balanced. And so it is a really cool divination tool, but it's mainly yes, no questions. And so I
Oh.
don't think it's that difficult to learn. Like, but I haven't come across anyone who just picks up a pendulum and it just starts working. Because like people have asked me about it and I just kind of show them like how I do it and what I do. And they're just like, yeah, I tried that and I couldn't get the pendulum to move.
Yeah. Do you know, like, happen to know why maybe some people can't get it to move?
I think it has, I think, I think it has something to do with your frequency and your connection to the pendulum.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like you should connect to the pendulum like you would a tarot deck.
Correct. And or you could next to the rods, right? It's kind of like the same similar thing. Like you have to connect to any divination tool. You have to infuse your energy into any divination tool to figure out if it's your thing or not. You're not going to know if you do not connect to whatever you're trying to use.
I have seen people do something similar with tarot, like if they're looking for numbers or numbered responses, or like even someone I saw on Facebook, someone who did like, oh, what's 7 times 7? And then they pulled some tarot cards, and then the numbers reduce to 49, which is
Yeah,
actually really
see?
freaking cool. So stuff
That's
like that
so
can
cool.
happen. Yeah. Stuff like that can happen if you're using the cards properly, if you're connected to the deck. And we've done that too. Like we've pulled numbers and reduced the numbers to get things like ages. Um, I think we
Soul
have done that
family.
for, yeah, numbers of members in our soul family. And essentially all you're doing is you're adding each number together, right? So if you have one card and the number's 15, and then another card and the number's 16, you would just do 1 plus 5 plus 1 plus 6, and then that would get you the answer. Or I've seen some people do like 1 plus 5 is 6, 1 plus 6 is 7, and then they add the two. So yeah, so there are different ways. There are so many different ways that you can use tarot and so many different ways that you can use divination. You just have to explore it and see what resonates for you.
And not give up so easily.
Yeah, don't be like most people and, study like 5 cards and then get tired of it or frustrated because you still have like, you know, 72 more to go.
Right. But I'm
um,
just saying, like, I know people who have like tried divination and they just get so frustrated with it after like a couple days or even a couple hours that they're like, nope, this isn't for me.
well, and that's the thing is, I think you really just need to pick a divination tool that resonates and that feels right. And for me, that was tarot. And for Ali, I think that was that Dowsing?
I can't say that I'm not trying to sound cocky here, but I can't say that I put any thought into any divination tool. Like, I think I just am a natural at a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, for me, the tarot came naturally. Outside of that, it was like it's work. So I have tried the dowsing. It just didn't work for me. I have seen some people do. This is like a different culture. A different culture. I've seen this in some African cultures, particularly the Nigerian culture, where
Hmm.
they will throw out shells on the ground and then just divinate freaking anything and everything. And it's like incredible to watch. And I don't know how they're doing it. But if that's something you're into, that's something you could explore if that resonates.
See, that sounds cool.
Yeah. If that sounds cool to you, then hey, go, explore that. I honestly don't know what it's called. Um, I've also seen people do like the candle melting, like melting the candle wax onto the ground or melting the candle wax into water and being able to divinate that way. Some people do the tea leaf thing. I've seen some people do like where you drink from the cup and they read your lip stain lines on the cup. Like there's
Oh
wild,
yeah, hand reading,
yeah,
like palm
hand reading,
reading,
palm
palm
reading.
readings. Yeah.
There's so many different forms of divination out there. So, you know, you could find something that resonates for you and that aligns for you. They're not all going to. So, just some thoughts, when it comes to trying to find something that works.
There's so many options, but we just wanted to talk about something lighter, talk about something more fun, talk about something that like we both really enjoy doing. And anyone who is interested, because I know people are interested in tarot, but I think it's just a little too daunting for them, or they try it and if they don't pick it up right away, they get frustrated and walk away from it. And I'm not saying tarot has to be your thing or oracle. I'm not saying any specific thing has to be your thing, but we just want to encourage you guys to try, just try different things and find what resonates and find what's fun. Like divination doesn't have to be the serious thing, right? It's just like make it fun because, we already have enough serious shit going on in the world. Like you got to find something that just brings joy to your heart.
Yes, definitely. And these days, like, we need that. So, hey,
Exactly.
if diving into divination, like, takes your mind away from our crumbling planet, then have at it. Because it sure did that for
Exactly.
me and Ali during COVID.
Yo, yeah. Well, it's not even just during COVID. It's like, COVID on. These last 4 years have been crazy.
I see some people on TikTok that are like, the last year I really cared about anything was 2019. After that, everything's a blur. And I'm just like, you know what? I really feel that. I really do.
I think the whole world feels that because like once the pandemic hit, it was just like, okay, none of you can go outside and all of you have to work from home and we're going to cut off all social events. And then it was like, oh, well, we gave away all this aid and now we have to make back all that money. So let's make the entire world suffer with inflation.
Right.
So it's just like there's been no balance. And I mean, yeah, that's why I'm saying like you got to do what like brings joy to your heart that can like get your mind off of your everyday shit. Like if Tiara and I didn't have some of these outlets, trust us, like we would not be in a good place mentally.
I'm going to tell you right now that I would probably be committed in a mental institution, and my relatives would be visiting me and waving to me through the little glass window because if they do anything else or open it, then I might hurt them or myself.
Okay. That is dark.
Maybe, but it's also honest.
I can't say that I'd be there because honestly, like I still traveled during COVID. Like people would message me and be like, "Where are you?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm in Mexico." And they'd be like, "What do you mean you're not at home?" Like they thought I was weird that I wasn't at home, and I was just like,
Yeah.
"Well, I'm not gonna let this stop my life. I'm just gonna continue to live life, and something's gonna kill me." And if COVID is what kills me, then it's what kills me. But I'm not gonna be afraid of it and I'm not going to run from it. And so I traveled for 2020. People thought I was crazy.
Well, because there were so many travel restrictions too.
Yeah, so
I
I
think is
found the
why people were.
countries and I found the countries that didn't have travel restrictions and I still traveled. I went to like 4 countries in 2020.
Ah, wow. Yeah. Um, a lot of us weren't brave enough to do that.
I know, I know.
So that's pretty
so
amazing.
so yeah, like I am, I also know my health. I'm not looking to like obviously followed the restrictions in the countries that I was visiting, but I was confident that COVID wasn't going to kill me and I figured it's probably here to stay and I'm going to catch it at some point and if I do catch it and survive it, then I'm going to build immunity to it. So that's why I didn't let it stop my life and I just kept traveling and I kept going into countries that were open and it was it was a relatively good year for me.
That's great. But like, yeah, you're right. Like since 2020, I think a lot of people are just kind of in this state of pause and like uncertainty and fear, which is really sad. So if going into divination helps you make sense of your life and helps give you clarity, please do it. And if you need some tips or guidance, you can reach out to me or Ali, and we'll give you that.
And breaking news, guys, we are going to do a community. We are in the process of
Woohoo!
setting it up right now and we have some really fun stuff planned. Like we want to do like live Q&A sessions, we want to have live events, we want to do our channeling sessions and just build a community where it's like if you're curious or want to know more about us, and we'll still be doing the podcast, but we are both so excited for this and we can't wait to meet like-minded people and build our soul tribe.
Absolutely. So we don't have a launch date yet, but in one of the future episodes, we will let you guys know. Again, it's still in the building phases right now, but I am so excited about having a community for us all to come together and build a soul tribe.
Absolutely. So I hope that you guys found this more interesting. I'm sorry about the trauma series. But as Tiara mentioned in the beginning of the episode, there is some wonderful like resources and information and we kind of share our personal stories because trauma really is intertwined in our everyday lives. It might not be the most fun to talk about, so we shifted gears and we are so excited for our community and we are so excited to see like what's going to be coming up in the next up because it's going to be up sooner than later. I can promise you that.
Awesome. So we will keep you guys posted.
Anyway, we've been talking for almost an hour. So we're going to tie this up. And I hope everyone has a really great week. And thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. And stay tuned for all the fun stuff we have in store.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.